It's just incredible that those 3 people survived, the flight attendant and 2 passengers. As for the pilots, Edward Murphy and Ian Hoffman, they both died in that crash, but they're hailed as heroes for steering clear of neighborhoods and almost all the cars on I-75. I want to bring in Wink News security analyst Rich Kolko, who is a retired FBI agent. He's also was a Navy pilot. You know a lot about these type things. Let's start with, as we try to figure out what went wrong. The NTSB is still looking into it. What are they looking into?
They are, Russ, and they're looking at the obvious 3 things you can think of. That's the crew, the pilot, the co-pilot, and the rest of the crew that was flying that day. Of course, the machine. We talked about the airplane, and we heard the pilot say they lost both engines, and the environment. And the NTSB has to carefully investigate all that. We saw them put that airplane, or what was left of that airplane, on a flatbed truck. They took it up to Jacksonville, Florida, where they put it in a hangar, and they took it apart, and that's the basis of how they're going to work on the report.
All right, so we know that there's a lawsuit over corrosion in some of the engine parts. What do we know about that at this point?
Well, what we know from preliminary information is that it has to do with that variable guide vane, and that controls the airflow into the engine and increases the efficiency and enables the aircraft to operate at various speeds. And the NTSB finds corrosion was the problem that could have contributed to the engine failure.
All right, and then finally, let's talk about the timing. We know that the plane had just been cleared to land at the Naples airport. What does that tell you about what happened?
That tells us that they were at the critical stage of flight, which is anytime you're takeoff or landing close to the ground, lower airspeed, lower altitude. And what really happened is they were coming in for that landing, so they were going down in altitude. They were cleared to land at 3:08, and about a minute and a half later, they had that terrible crisis, that emergency, problems that they were trained to expect, but they did not expect to have them happen that day.
Brakes are on, prop is clear, master on, beacon on.
From the time a pilot begins training, they learn the takeoff and landing phase is the most critical. That's because altitude and airspeed are your best asset in an emergency.
Clear for takeoff, climb maintain 3000, left 180.
Tim Reed, a flight instructor at Fly Right Aviation in Fort Myers, put us in the simulator to see what Flight 823 may have faced that fateful day.
You're close to the ground and we're operating slow.
Pilots need to be prepared for any scenario. They even do an abort or loss of power brief before takeoff. Whoops.
If I lost my engine, where would I go? So we're below 1,000 feet, so we have to make a decision to go straight ahead. We can go for this. There's a golf course over here.
But approaching Naples Airport 2 years ago, the crew was not training. They had a real emergency, a complete power loss at low altitude and slow speed, one of the worst scenarios possible.
We're not going to make the runway. We've lost both engines.
When they lost power up a little bit to the right of us. They were coming in from the north.
The Challenger pilots knew they could not make it to the airport, and every second the options became more limited. They chose I-75 south. So Russ, even 2 years later, they still don't know the exact cause of that crash.
The NTSB tells us the final report is due out in 30 days or less. Once we get that information, of course, we will pass it along to you. All right, coming up in our next half hour, we're going to talk with one man who has never talked publicly, I should say, about the plane crash. He says that he was slightly delayed on his day. That may have saved his life. Coming up at 5:30, we're going to hear from one of the first people on the scene to talk to the survivors who escaped from the plane crash. And then at 6 o'clock, Wink Investigates asks some tough questions of Hoppajet, the owner of the plane that crashed, as we continue to look at what went wrong. Again, all that coming up later this evening. A lot to break down as we still wait for that final report. For now, reporting live in Collier County, Russ McCaskey, Wink News.
Yeah, still so much to unpack.